Greg. So today it looks like we got a room full and going through independent project records. We're up to 5, 6, and 7, which is something that we're going to be talking about. And we're covering this record, Human Hands, today. So. Yippee! Are you ready for this, Greg?
As ready as I'll ever be.
All right, so Bruce, I guess we start off with you because this is the first record that you released on Independent Project that wasn't a project that you were a part of, at least musically. So why Human Hands? Why did you decide to release this record?
So I had been going to see bands playing in the club in LA for a few years, and Human Hands were one of my favorite bands to go see. They're a lot of fun, and the songs were great. So it was one of those things where it was like they had like 2 albums worth of material that I thought was great. And, there was a single and there was an EP and a couple of compilation tracks. And then they split up and I was like, but what about these Human Hands records that we all need? So I approached, I think Dennis or Juan, I don't remember who I got in touch with first. Maybe it was Dennis. And I just proposed, do you guys have any recordings that we could put together into a release? And so we just started gathering together what they had, and it turned out to be 2 albums and a single. So
nice. So I think this is a good time to introduce our guests, Greg. What do you think?
I think we should do it. We can go around the room and tell us who they are.
Rick, let's start with you.
So I'm Rick Potts, and I was playing bass and guitar in Human Hands, and I don't know. That's my name, and that's what I did.
All
right, also wrote some songs.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely like to get into that. Dennis, how about you?
Dennis Beck here, mostly drums, a few out-of-tune vocals, and some songwriting.
A little bit of songwriting, I'd say.
A little bit of, yeah, couple.
All right, Bill.
Hi, Bill Noland, keyboard player, blad a few things on trumpet and a little singing here and there, and little songwriting. So
nice. Juan?
Hello, I'm not Rick Potts, and I played guitar and bass.
Very nice.
Guitar.
And then the other member, of course, was David Wiley, who passed in '86, I believe.
86.
Original singers. All right, so you guys had all these recordings, but before we get started on those, can we talk about how the name came up? Who came up with the name Human Hands?
Dennis, right? Dennis, you did, I think.
I might take credit for that if everyone lets me. Well, yeah, what I remember is we were sitting around Bill's house one day. We hadn't actually started the band yet. I don't think. I might be wrong about that, but
we were.
Had we started playing yet?
I don't know if we'd been playing, but we were certainly putting it together.
We were putting it together, so we had all the 5 members, figure it out. Yeah. We were talking about names. I don't remember what other names were getting thrown around, but somehow the name, the words Human Hands came to me because I thought that this band was going to be very unique and very sort of personal and homemade in a sense, and it seemed like, wow, it's made by human hands. It's an art, like it sounds pretentious, like an art object or something, but it just seemed to fit what I thought we were about to do.
It also looked good in print too.
Well, that's very true. Yeah.
So do you, Bill.
Hey, alliteration.
Alliteration.
We were also, I think part of the idea was avoiding using the.
I didn't completely succeed in avoiding that.
No.
People kept saying it.
There are plenty of times we were the Human Hands.
Even the helping hands.
Yeah. And the name was
true.
so good. Now there's a band in England that is using it. So
Yeah, I've done my best to put Anthony curses on them, but nothing has stopped them yet. I'm working on it. Yeah, they have a bunch. They're from Bristol. Anyway, don't print anything about them. They don't exist. I do remember quite clearly, because it's not an unusual thing, that at least Dennis and I went through about 10,959 million name ideas for the band, and I surrendered to Human Hands. I just gave up, and it was
Can you name
that I did.
Can you name all of the other ones, Juan, just quickly?
I can tell you the one that I thought I was going to kill you when you suggested it. I thought, why am I working with this guy? You want to know what it was?
Sure.
Yeah.
Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola?
I said, why are you suggesting that?
I don't remember that.
No one else would think of calling their band that. I said, we'll never afford lawyers.
I don't remember that one.
You weren't, Bill, this is before I knew you.
Oh,
We were trying to come up with a name for the project that was, but we didn't have it. See, it came up really close to all of us sitting around. The prehistory is that Dennis and I were already writing songs, and we weren't Paul is Dead, and we weren't Monitors anymore. So, and it was fun. It was actually fun to come up with names, but you know how after a while it drives you crazy, and you just like, let's just pick something that doesn't sound horrendous.
yeah,
Right.
pretty true.
Yeah.
And everyone thinks we named it after an Elvis Costello song that is actually about 5 years later.
Yes.
So Greg, we were talking earlier about the LAFMS, the Los Angeles Free Music Society, and we wanted to know a little bit more about that, didn't we?
Yeah, and also kind of how you guys came to know each other and put the band together. It seems you guys have been working together for a long, long time in various other projects. So I was always very curious about that.
Well, I was had returned from Europe after college, and the punk scene was getting going, and I had to come home, and I really wanted to be involved with that, the LA scene. And so I started going to the Mask gigs a lot, anything. I kept running into this guy, David Wiley. He was in the Consumers at the time. And he said, hey, you know, we've been thinking about adding keyboards. So why don't you come to our next show? And I said, great. So I ended up seeing their last show that he got beat up on stage and tied up with mic cords and stuff. And I thought, wow, is this the show? Wow, weird, you know? But his lower tooth went through his bottom lip, and there was blood everywhere. And I thought, whoa. So so much for that. We just kept bumping into each other, and he finally kept saying, hey man, you gotta go see these friends of mine in Pasadena, LAFMS. You gotta see them. I said, okay, let's go see them. And so we just went out there and started hanging out, and everybody got along great. And we all had sort of similar aesthetics and interests. And then we kind of cherry picked these guys, and it all worked out, at least on my end.
I met Dennis like 74 when I was still in high school, and he, because of, you know, the whole Poo-Bah Records, that's really the kind of the spiritual center of not all of LAFMS, but a lot of it, because Tom Rishon was there, and Dennis was the person I met from the crowd of people. And I don't know, for some reason, immediately kind of, tell me if I'm wrong, but it seemed like we just kind of wanted to write songs together right away. And you already had some great ones, and then we knew Rick pretty quickly, and I really liked what he did with his, you know, burgeoning craft as a really clever songwriter in the best sense of the word as well. And it took us a lot to convince Rick to be in an actual band that was going to be playing at clubs and stuff, you know. And but we just Bill and Dennis and David and I were all on board to just insist that he join us. We just wouldn't leave him alone. So
I think we finally offered him $50 or something.
You guys had the Monitors going.
that's true.
And that sort of was segued into, you guys starting another band.
Yeah, but we were all emphatic that Rick needed to join. And
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
it took a little bit of going over to his house and finagling, and anyway, he finally relented. Thank goodness.
We basically stalked him.
Yeah, we were pretty awful.
My memory is that we had a pretty close conversation about why we want Rick in the band, and we needed a bass player, and he just like approached every instrument with it in completely original attitude, about it. And so we just thought, it's why we asked Bill, why David, we talked about a keyboard player, because we didn't want to just have, two guitars, bass and drum, and a guy screaming and getting beat up on stage. It was like a different, we all wanted to do something different and not we wanted to be part of the scene. That's kind of contradictory at the same time.
Plus, I think we wanted to be part of, you're right, I think we wanted to be part of the punk scene, but we didn't want to be necessarily a punk band or typical punk band. I think we wanted to be more than that.
And
not to say that there's anything wrong with a punk band, but
well, and the scene at the time was really, the punk scene was really open to everybody and anything and any ideas, and everyone would allow everyone to open or play with or be a part of their show, and I thought it was just incredibly rich culturally and musically, and it exposed a lot of kids to a lot of different things, and everybody was super accepting about that. And that was one of the best things about the band or the scene.
And one of the things that shared really pretty much to a member was our love of, in I think maybe this particular order. And our first ad when we were looking for a bass player, because Rick just kept saying no, we weren't giving up, was it said we're looking for Captain Beef and Funkadelic and Stockhausen.
And Stockhausen. Yeah. And Stockhausen and I think we said
no trout
players. No trout players.
And we wanted to make sure that was a really small group of people, so we would just end up begging Rick, please, you're the only one that fits. It's like, who else is going to answer to this?
Exactly.
I came to it sort of a crooked path, because some of my first trials playing music with people was playing rock music, and it was horrible. We had a bad time and the music was bad and it wasn't any fun. So we started improvising, and that was fun, and we had a great time. And we did that for a few years and put out some of the early LAFMS records.
Yeah.
And then we started I guess Juan and Dennis started a band called Paul is Dead. And at first I played tenor sax. Frederick was playing bass. Tom Rashawn on drums, of course, Juan and Dennis on guitar and drums. Well, I got that wrong, but anyway,
Tom was keyboards.
Tom was keyboards, yeah. And then even had Edward Stapleton for a bit doing vocals and synthesizer, and that's when I picked up the bass when Frederick moved to San Francisco, and it was a lot of fun. So my previous times of being in a rock band were now, it was like, oh, I'm having a great time with my friends, and I like the songs that Dennis and Juan were writing. And but meanwhile, I also started going to art school, and I had my first steady girlfriend. Well, that was later, but I don't know. It's just like, I was kind of really jaded. I really didn't like rock music for a few years, but playing music with these guys was so much fun. I was like, okay, I guess I can do it, even if I'm not sure I like rock music.
Well, I'd say we certainly weren't the typical rock band at the point.
No, we had a lot of different spices to it, I think.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, and that's why I enjoyed it, because I liked the material and it was just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there were, it turns out there were a lot of people, like Bill was saying, in that early scene that were really big. And I found out how open-minded some of them were after talking to them about music, because you think, well, they're sticking pretty close to that formula. It's interesting.
So I had a question about the songwriting, because you guys have mentioned that all of you have done songwriting, and when you read the credits, everybody's got songwriting credits on this album. The whole band member are bringing in songs. So how would you guys bring in songs? Did somebody come in with an idea and then the rest of you would fill it out, or did you come in with somebody would come in with a complete song? How did the songwriting process work?
Dennis and I started writing songs together, and it was like really pretty much the beginning of us learning to do that. I had experimented with writing songs. I'm sure you had too before that, but we were trying out different ideas, and then Dennis became a prolific songwriter on his own. Bill wrote his own material. Rick had a ton of songs, and we never had enough time to learn all of them. And then we started writing songs together by improvising in the studio. Yeah. And then a lot of times Dennis would contribute the lyrics to those. Or, you know, I would throw a musical idea at the band and we'd create something, or Rick would. I remember we put, like, Go Existential was one of the sort of more organically formed. I remember working in my bedroom with Rick on that one, because you had an idea and I had an idea, and we somehow got him to work. And then Dennis just, I don't know how, I never quite knew how you could make sense out of stuff like that and come up with it. But it was really fun. And I think that's what we enjoyed the most, actually, is that collaborative, even in the studio, just improvising.
Absolutely.
We just came up with a song by the end of at least a structure for a song by the end of a rehearsal. So
yeah. And so the framework would almost always, no matter who brought it in, there was a framework. Yeah. And then everybody just started trying well, what if I try this sound on the synthesizer or the keyboard and play this little pattern? And everybody's just sort of tacked on their own little thing, and it made a richer stew, and like any collaboration does. And but no, I don't remember anybody saying, you know, bringing in the song and saying everyone has to play these parts. That was never the way it was. It was always kind of a loose, you know, a chord changes and the arrangement was kind of there, and some, of course, that would all change. But we all just kept trying, and then something will come together.
Dennis, a lot of these have your name on as songwriting credit. So what did you bring to the songs? Was it mostly lyrical or musical ideas as well?
I think it was both, probably more lyrics than excuse me, music, but I mean, probably the bulk of the songs Juan and I wrote together. He would come up with a riff or some or even maybe a full-fledged song sequence, and then I would listen to that and come up with lyrics to fit it. I mean, there are a few songs that I wrote on my own, like My Kitchen and I think Upside Down. There are a few, but mostly it was a collaboration. And like Juan said, the one with Rick, that they worked on Go Existential. That I heard that guitar riff in that song, and I just thought it was amazing. And I thought, wow, this guy really has to be a song. And I drew on my time in junior college, where I took a philosophy class, and I remember studying existentialism and thought it was interesting. And I don't exactly know how that got glued into the song, but it seemed to work.
3 a.m. a dream.
Tongue in cheek.
Oh, yeah, there you go. But I mean, I think what Juan's saying is right. Or what Bill is saying is right too. That the songwriting process is very open. I think we wanted everyone to come up with the most unusual, interesting parts that they could. We didn't want any standard rock and roll parts, you know. And I think everyone drew on their background, like Juan was saying about the ad for the bass player. You know, here are the things that we love: Captain Beefheart, Sun Ra, Stockhausen,
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
you're into Can and stuff like that. And
Faust.
you know, I don't say any of those influences were I think they were all blended in, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You
Yeah.
know, suddenly.
The smoothie.
Whereas a good smooth, yeah, I would say that.
The only one of those bands that I ever had people come back to me and say, wow, that reminds me a little bit of was Captain Beefheart. Like a couple of people told me that after even just hearing us rehearsing in a studio one night. I think it was Craig Lee. And at first I thought he was putting us down, but then I heard he informed me that he was a huge Captain Beefheart fan. But don't let all those punks know that. Anyway, it was kind of surprising to hear him say that, because I used to think of those guys as purists, and I realized that was just my misconception about a lot of stuff. But I mean, I really think that Captain Beefheart is the main thing that inspired us to not to sound like them, or him, but to sound as much as we could as our own bands. So,
but that was blended in also with our love for the up and coming punk bands. I mean, we love Talking Heads. We love, you know, the New York bands. We love the British bands, Buzzcocks, Flash, all that stuff. Patti Smith, Ramon. I mean,
I think part of the reason why people maybe thought that about Beefheart was Dennis's drums were not your typical rock drum. And I mean, there was so much going on. Kind of a mixture of Beefheart and some jazz and rock, but he really played. I mean, it was like a voice in a way, and as well as a propellant, and I think Dennis's drum playing really helped frame the sound of Human Hands.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like anybody else, and nobody was playing like Dennis was playing.
Yeah.
So
I would totally
thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
would totally agree, but I think, Bill, a big part for me as a listener is the keyboard sound that you would get. I think it's very it's something that really stands out with the music of Human Hands is the keyboard sounds that you would get.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. And part of that, of course, like any creativity is, you know, if you're limited, whether it's finances, which we were and I was, then, you know, if you give a kid a box of crayons, they'll draw you a picture. If you give them a key to go into the art store, they'll just pull everything off the shelf. So I only had 2 little keyboards. I had a little Micro Moog that I bought. I cleared out my checking account in college. It was $700. And I had a little Roland RS-09 organ, and I had to come up with the stuff with just those 2 things for a long time until I could get something else. But thank you. It was fun, and it forces you to think, you know, because you're limited.
And I think that in a way that was Bill's keyboard playing, and the sound was something that did set us apart a little bit from a lot of the other bands playing at the time. That wasn't a typical element.
That was one of the things that drew me as a fan to your guys' band, was the sound that you were all creating and the keyboard sound. A lot of the other punk bands didn't have keyboards. And I mean, my introduction to Human Hands was, I remember seeing the Consumers at the Whiskey at some show. And I just remember David, because he looked so out of place in front of these other punk rock guys. Glasses, and he was just kind of like, looked like a chemist, you know. And I think he got beat up by his band on stage and at the Whiskey, that show that I saw. And then I don't know how much longer it was. I happened to catch one of your guys' first shows somewhere, and I recognized David at the front. But then I was also like listening to what all of you were doing instrumentally, and the songs that you were creating, which were really catchy. And it was just like, wow, this is just great. And so I tried to catch however many shows I could that you guys were doing.
And David's nerdy look fit in with the rest of us at that point
Yeah.
too. So
Yeah,
he found his
absolutely.
band.
Yeah, absolutely.
For 2 seconds. It just happened perfectly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how would David develop his vocal deliveries? Since for the most part, he wasn't a major songwriter other than when it was like a full band songwriting. Would you guys show him a vocal part, or how did he come up with the melodies?
I think he was left to interpret the song. They were like a template for him. And he also, I always was sort of impressed. I mean, in some sense of the word, we were all sort of non-musicians starting out. And I mean, I kind of identified with that label. I don't even know if I knew of it much before that, but I kind of thought, I get what that means or how it applies to me. And he really had a really good ear. He caught on to every song we threw at him so quickly that I was just always impressed, and he remembered all the lyrics immediately. He had a good memory for that. And he actually did contribute some lyrical content and even musical ideas. So
He did. Yeah, he did.
he didn't play an instrument, but he had a way to approach instruments that was like, I personally, because I lived with him, I kept pushing him to do more of that. And I kept saying, here's an idea for a song. Do you want to try to work on it? And let's see if we can come up with lyrics. And we actually did do a couple of things that became more fully formed into a Human Hand song. So, but he was just very self-conscious about that. But interestingly, because he was kind of a writer. So, he liked writing. He was really literate as far as reading. His reading was really into, reading literature and stuff. And he was an English major. So
he had a really good ear for the tone or the vibe of the song. I mean, Dennis or somebody, he'd have the lyrics and he'd have the melody for the lyrics, but David would take it and make it fit really well into the vibe of the song. He was really good at that, about finding the right vibe or the right tone of his voice. He was subtle, but he was doing a lot. And like all of us, as we kept playing, we all got better. But he was very talented with that. He was also really talented about hooking up people. Oh, you should meet this guy. He was really good at that.
His phrasing was really good.
His phrasing was excellent.
And I appreciate that then, but I appreciate it even more now, because you listen to those recordings and it's like, he's doing a really good job of knowing when to sing and when to pause and when to, accent things.
Yeah.
And I think it was pretty intuitive for him, but like you say, I think he got better at that too. But yeah, really good phrasing.
It's hard to hear yourself. It's hard to hear the resonance of yourself with everything else going on. And he was pretty darn good at that.
Yeah, I think the other thing he did too, or maybe you've already touched on this, is that he injected attitude and personality in a lot of those songs that weren't necessarily obvious from the lyrics. The lyrics were eccentric in most cases, but David took them to a different level with an incredible attitude that really worked, and especially on stage, you really saw that in his performance.
Yeah, he was a great actor. I mean, we were all wearing sort of Dickies clothing and Sears Roebuck kind of stuff, but he could come off menacing, and he could back it all off and be nerdy if it applied to the song. It was really interesting.
Well, that was what was so exciting about him, is that the contrast between, he looked like we all did in a sense, but he looked like he just walked out of a chess club meeting, And suddenly he was a punk rock singer that you were a little bit worried about standing too close to the stage, you know. So that was a beautiful contrast, I think.
Yeah.
That's good.
And he was unflappable on stage too. He just let everything come, never batted an eye. I think he liked being at some shows, especially. I wasn't comfortable with that. He was really, really comfortable with it.
He also knew like 99.9% of everyone in the scene too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that helped.
We were like, I was like, well, speaking for myself, it's like I was around with David a lot of shows, and it was always David,
Yeah.
coming up to him. You know,
Absolutely.
like, yeah, I could just kind of stand back there, and which was fine, but he was magnetic that way.
He was.
All right, I wanted to go in a little bit different direction. So prior to Bruce releasing this Human Hands release on IPR, the band had a couple singles. You were on a couple compilations. Was there ever a plan to actually record a studio album?
There wasn't a plan, but there were high hopes.
Yeah, we all wanted that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
we
First,
all wanted it.
Trains versus Planes and Blue Wheel was on and IRS, subsidiary Faulty Records. We expected that to be followed up with something, but I don't know. I'm not sure anymore what happened. We had really a manager that had never managed a band before, and I don't know. A lot of it, I don't know what it was about. But if anybody has any insight into that, I'd like to hear it.
I'm still scratching my head about all that.
Yeah,
Well, I
me too.
remember we were listed in the, you guys probably remember that LA Times article that listed the 10 best bands in LA. And we were at that list, but seemingly the only band on the list that weren't getting offered record deals. So I don't know.
I don't
Even
know.
though-
That was
even though they
frustrating.
cut shows, and then we just never got reports after that. So,
Yeah.
and our audience kept growing too. So I don't know what it was about. I never really got a good handle
I
on.
think maybe we were just,
We couldn't fit into a mold
we
for them.
were, yeah, I guess that's about what I was trying to say.
I
Sort of,
think
yeah.
that was a big part of it, was like, there wasn't a pigeonhole you could put us in necessarily to market, and I don't know, if the label had a marketing strategy that was a little more open-minded and avant-garde or creative, that might have changed. It should have, but it didn't. So
Yeah.
So what led up to the band dissolving in 82 or 83? That first
frustration.
I think it was September of 81 at the Whiskey, the grand finale. It was frustration because
It was frustration.
we had too many people courting us and nothing was coming of it. And we started, I think, second guessing ourselves, doubting what we were doing.
But ironically enough, the stuff that we were writing toward the end was absolutely the best stuff we were doing, and really super interesting. And some of it was a little longer, and it's really unfortunate that stuff never made it to vinyl or CD or whatever.
That was one of the things that I was finding really compelling about your evolution as a band, was that you started doing these longer songs. You would have these songs that would start off normal, and then they would just sort of shift gears and kind of go off into this instrumental wonderland for 5 minutes. And I was just like, wow, this is really great. And I wanted more. So, but I mean, we did get a couple of those songs on the record that we put together. Unfortunately, the recording quality is not the greatest, but they're documented. And for me, that was the most important thing. I mean, the reason I approached you guys is like, I love music and I'm a collector, and I'm like, I wanted one. I'm a collector. Okay, the only way this is going to happen is if I make it. So
Thanks again. Thanks again for doing it.
And I had some success with the Savage Republic album, so I had some money that I could put into pressing up a record for you guys. So
I remember going to Nate Starkman, the building, with David one, it was on a Sunday or Saturday, because you invited us over, and you know, we were already friends, acquaintances, and you know, and had been to each other's shows, and I kind of thought, oh, how fun, I get to see that building, and I had no idea you were going to ask us if we wanted. It was already, by the time it got going, we had broke. That was already like something in, was that like in 81 when we went over there? We were living in Hollywood, and I remember.
So the record came out in, was it 83 or 80?
Yeah, it took a couple of years after we broke up.
So it says October 82 on the
82.
Okay. So that was actually over a year before I was in the Starkman building.
Oh, okay.
Those covers I printed at the Women's Graphic Center in downtown LA.
That
So
might have been
maybe that's where you came,
Yes.
where you, because I
the building.
had taken the class in letterpress printing there, and I
Yep.
was starting to do my own work at the studio.
Yeah, that's what it was. That's what we went to. And
Okay.
Yeah, that was a good situation. And then after that, you got the building.
Yeah, I realized I needed my own space and my own print shop, and that's when I found the Nate Starkman building. And
What year was the first LP of Savage Republic?
it was May of 82.
82.
So
So,
this was later the same year.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So who worked on the sequencing on this Human Hands release? Bruce, were you a part of that with Dennis or the entire band, or who came up with what would be on what record? So I know part of it's the live show, so
I think that was Bruce entirely, wasn't it? Wasn't that you, Bruce?
It could have been. It could have been, yeah.
I think it was Bruce.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Bruce did it.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, I just said, I want to hear everything you've got. And they just brought all of these tapes together. And so I would, put them onto a cassette and kind of play around with song order. I've always really liked the way you can make a song flow into another song, or there's just, you got to listen to the beginnings and the endings of each song, and just, you want to take people on a journey through this record. And so that's what I've tried to do with this one.
I still approach anything I'm working on or anything I've ever produced as if there was an A side and a B side, whether there was or wasn't.
Yeah.
Like even when CDs came out, I still thought of it as an A and a B side, and would try to sequence it accordingly.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess that's just the way I hear it, because it's what I was raised on.
What we grew up with.
Yeah, exactly. But it is like a book, like a story, I mean, it's not just a bunch of singles. They should flow, and it should tell a bigger story, or should have a little bit of nuance and some meaning, some obvious meaning and some subtle. So sequencing is super important.
So Bruce, Greg and I were very curious about the catalog numbering on this. So there's 3 vinyl records, 2 12-inch LPs, and a 7-inch single. And you went ahead and listed those as IP005, IP006, and IP007. What was the thought process on that, instead of just making it one catalog number for the entire release?
It was the first release that I'd done that was more than one record. And I don't know, there was just something about it that just, maybe it was because there was a 7-inch single with 2 vinyl LPs. It just felt like it wasn't just one thing. It just felt like each record should have its own number. So that's what I came up with. And yeah, it does make it a little unwieldy. And in all honesty, I've stopped doing that with some of the things that we're now doing, the reissues that we're doing that'll have a bonus disc. it's just this one catalog number for the project. I think, yeah, at the time, it felt like the right thing to do. So
There are a lot of things different about the band Human Hands, and that definitely adds to that. That's something different. So what about the aesthetic of the look? Bruce, I imagine that you had a lot to do with this. What did the band think when you saw the aesthetic of it, the visual, the cover?
I thought it was
the
awesome.
presentation?
I thought it was awesome.
I loved it.
Loved it.
Yeah.
Totally.
So you
It
guys
didn't
approved of
look
it.
like anything else.
No,
Yeah.
it was awesome. It was unique. It was beautiful. That you could tell the quality was there with the hand pressing and printing and lettering. It was gorgeous. Just loved it.
And it was very consistent with, I think, what we were talking about when we came up with the name, that we wanted it to be very personal and you know, like a craft, something art crafted, you know. And I think, man, I mean, even all those years later, Bruce came up with something that was absolutely consistent with that philosophy. Pretty amazing.
That's nice.
It was gorgeous. It fit perfectly.
I thought of it, and I was kind of humbled by it, because I kind of thought of it as such a labor of love that nobody needed to make this. We wanted to have an albums out, you know, and I thought, you know, we're a band that doesn't even exist anymore. Why are you doing this? And then we get this, and it was like, oh my God, especially the red vinyl ones. And it was just, I was just knocked out. And I kind of, you know, I don't know about any of you guys. Probably not you, Dennis or Rick, but I'm not sure, Bill, you were working I had started the Romans, but I really almost felt like giving up on music for a while because it was so devastating. And then he brought this, and it just kind of thought, oh, this was worth it. Look what came out of it, you know? And it
was redemption.
It was redemption. That's a really good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Total redemption.
Yeah, and we weren't working with Hollywood sleaze bags, you know, and it was kind of on our own terms, more like the LAFMS aesthetic that I was used to.
Yeah.
And you know, we got a double album and a single, and I just really loved the artwork, and the letterpress was beautiful and really unique. And so, you know, it was a really happy surprise.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm glad for that. Yeah, for me, I was still learning how to do the letterpress, and so I was able to experiment some more and see what can I do here. And I loved you guys' band name, and so that Human Hands logo that's on there was carved out of a little rubber eraser. It was maybe 2 inches long, and I had just took like linoleum block carving tools, and I carved that, made a rubber stamp of it, and then blew it up on the Xerox machine, which enhanced all the imperfections of it. And I was just like, wow, this is perfect, you know. And then it gave me a couple of photos to work with. And again, back at that time, I had the only thing we had to work with was Xerox machines. And so I would photocopy these photographs to get them more high contrast, and then have printing plates made. And it made for some really interesting textural aspects to the photographs. So, and then all the handset type that they had at the Women's Graphic Center. So it was just like, okay, what's going to fit here? How's this going to work together? So it's a construction, and it was a really fun project to do.
And the cardstock was so different.
The 45 that was in it.
Board, yeah.
All that. I love that booklet. I think it's almost part of my favorite thing of the packaging. The lyric booklet.
Oh, the little lyric booklet that I made. Yeah. I almost forgot about that.
Oh.
But yeah, that was something that came later. That didn't come with the record. We need to do a lyric booklet, and made 100 of those. So
yeah, only 100.
I was gonna say my copy didn't come with a lyric booklet, so I was wondering if I got ripped off. So that explains it.
Didn't come with the record.
Were they weren't numbered though, were they? I know
yeah, I did number the lyric booklets.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to look.
I've still got one or two of them. in the
Okay.
box.
I don't think I have one. I'll buy one off you.
Maybe I should do a reprint.
Yeah, yeah.
So I did want to mention that this was a limited 1,000 copy, the first edition at least, and numbered. Mine is 451 on my copy. So, Bruce, what was the thought with like the numbering, making it more personalized? I know you had done that a little bit in the past. So
yeah, I think you know, when I started the record label, it was all about making art out of making records art. And so, you know, if instead of a print that you put on the wall, there's a print edition. So it's a numbered print edition. So I brought that into making phonograph records. And I just thought, well, I just like the idea of it being a numbered edition. And of course there were additional unnumbered promotional copies that were marked for promotional use. But you know, once I started getting into it, I realized that the numbering system was really good for like inventory control.
Oh.
And so you could, and then, you know, you just kind of keep track of how many have been sold and where they went and that sort of thing.
So that sounds like that was more of like a bonus afterthought than a reason to do that.
Yeah.
So this record was released in 1982, but in 1990, I think the second pressing came out. Is that correct? The red pressing version.
So yeah, at that point I decided it needed to come back into print, and I printed another 1,000 album jackets, and I had found this sort of reddish colored chipboard at the time, something that I was never able to find again. That's the thing with chipboard. You never know what you're going to get, and sometimes you get some interesting shades. So, and I did it, and this was 2-color run. I did a 3-color run and kind of changed the typesetting around a bit. There were actually, trying to remember, I'm pretty sure it was only 600 of that run got pressed. There were 300 that were red vinyl and then 300 that were black vinyl. And it was selling a lot slower than I anticipated at the time. And so at some point when I was paying for storage lockers, I, you know, recycled about 400 covers. So I've done that with a couple of releases and regretted it later. So, but it is.
I have about 100 jackets.
Wow.
Okay, I must have given you some.
You did, of course, yeah.
You
somebody
offered us jackets. I remember that.
Okay. Yeah, I hated to throw stuff away, you know?
Yeah. Here's number 3 of the
All
book.
right. There's the
Nice.
Yeah. It's a cool little objet. I don't know where 1 and 2 are.
So how many pages are in there, Juan?
Let's see.
This is
They are-
totally new to me. So,
Looks like there are 16 numbered pages
wow.
up front, you know, with these insert and back, and then there's 16 pages. So
Wow.
but I'm not showing them to you properly.
Yeah.
But, yeah, there's
Wow.
some cool stuff we did. Sent Bruce.
Yeah, just a bunch of images from your flyers that you guys
Yeah.
were, because you guys always made really great flyers for your gigs.
Thank you.
So Juan, do you still have those 100 covers?
I believe so. I'm not sure if it's 100. Yeah. Oh no, I didn't throw them away.
Wow.
Yeah,
All right. We'll talk afterwards. Bruce.
Sure.
Bruce, so what was the purpose of the lyric booklet? I mean, other than the obvious of having lyrics, was it something that you sold or a promo?
Yeah.
item?
Sold it through the mail order. It was not a moneymaker. I just kind of wanted something else to offer. And I thought the lyrics to the band's songs were so interesting that it would be fun for people to be able to read them. So
Excellent. So one last question for me, and then Greg, I'll let you go. Sorry for taking so much time.
no.
So the single, you know I would, Greg. So the single that comes with the the record. So Bruce, was there any thought about rolling these songs into the 12 inches and just releasing 12 inches, or there just wasn't enough room? Why adding the extra 7-inch single?
Something that would cause the whole thing to get warped more easily.
Like the
I remember
band.
you asking, would you like to put, you have so many songs, would you like to put a 40 in there? And we had A Sensible Guy, which was like the very first song. Wasn't that a very early recording, Dennis?
One of the first ones we did, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And I think it was one of the last one. I had never heard it before, and then as we were going through tapes, it was like one of the later ones that I heard. It's like, if I'm remembering correctly, you know, it's like you dug out, oh yeah, here's this early song, Sensible Guy. And I listened to it and I was just like, this is great. This would make a great single. And I think that was kind of the idea.
Yeah.
Sensible
It kind
Guy,
of works.
almost anything that you guys had, that was the single. And
It does work as a
one of the things I loved about it was the fact that at the very end, there's like this little guitar thing that you do, Juan. It's kind of, there's something about it that made me think of the Beatles, and I really like that. So
Yeah,
Look at-
the endings.
yeah,
I still have the opportunity of making my head fatter even at this age. So here I have 3 empty jackets right here in my hands.
all right.
There's 4 in the basement. So, yep. They're nice for framing. So anyway, yeah, 45. I love that idea that there was a 45 in there. So I was going to ask you guys, Bruce, when was that included in the?
So the single was in the first edition. I didn't do the single for the second edition, which is the covers that you're looking at right now.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
So why leave it out on the second edition? Just because the warping, it wasn't practical, money,
It was a cost thing, right?
cost? Yeah.
yeah, I don't remember exactly. It could have been any number of those things or a combination thereof.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
I think we would just be, I mean, back then people would do special things on first runs and then, you know, to make a more like sort of a collector's world thing, you know. You guys remember thinking that way about that? Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no,
And the other
Agreed.
thing I remember was people would write in the inner part of the vinyl. They'd put little messages, and we did that, and that was a lot of fun.
I forgot what it was.
the dead wax, right?
What?
And they call it the dead wax, right?
Yeah, in
Do
the
it-
center. Yeah, right after the tracking out.
The spin out or whatever it's called.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
spin out or whatever it's called. That was fun to
Run out.
do.
run out group.
So this one
Run
says,
out.
yeah,
Yeah.
this one says the humanity is up to you.
Oh, that's it. Man.
I don't know if I ever knew that.
Oh yeah, there's some cool stuff. That was fun. I like that. I like those little mystery messages that
Yeah.
almost nobody ever talked to us about.
Yep.
Greg, did you have anything that you wanted to ask?
I think this was an amazingly informative and good interview. Everybody was just, it was wonderful. I guess maybe one other question, and I don't know, I know it's running on a little long, but if you could just give an idea about some of your memorable live performances, because I always remember, it seemed that the times that I saw you, it was always just a real fun event, you know. So anything stands out from your memory on any particularly good live shows, or some you particularly remember?
I will just say, I remember the very first show that we did where we opened for the Go-Go's. It was Club 88, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the only reason I'm bringing that up is because I didn't know David that well at that point. I mean, he was in the band, we'd been rehearsing a little bit, but we'd never played a live show. And I just so strongly remember starting the set. I mean, we didn't know what kind of live band we were going to be at that point, and watching David start to perform and just thinking, holy mackerel, what, this guy is a firecracker. I didn't know that he was going to be so dynamic. And I just remember playing drums and watching him from behind and thinking, this is not what I expected, but this is really incredible. So that's one memory that I have.
Yeah, that's interesting that you should mention that, because when we rehearsed and stuff, I mean, he would kind of move and perform a little bit, but it was different than when he was there. There was an audience, there was feedback, there was a vibe from the crowd, and he would plug into that and then go for it. And he was a natural at that. And I think for me anyway, I mean, we were rehearsed, so I wasn't worried about, we knew the songs. I knew we could perform them and not mess up.
Yeah.
But I still didn't know really, and it was our first gig. I didn't really know if it would work. And man, he was kind of the glue to it. And he was very good at reading that vibe and then going out and doing it. And
he really set the tone for the band at that early moment.
He did.
Not something we'd ever discussed or said, you know, we're going to have this kind of attitude, or, you know, we want you to be this kind of lead singer. It was just, that was his instinctive move in it.
Yeah, and that was the way we did everything. I mean, you know, like I was saying back to when we're, you know, nobody said, Bill, you play this part, and Rick, you play that part. It was like, you guys come up with your parts, and that was David. You know, it was like, this is your performance. You know, we're not going to tell you how to do it. And he was a natural at it.
He really put me at ease, because I knew the audience was going to be watching him, and so I wouldn't have to be shy. I could focus on playing my bass.
Yeah.
But when we opened for the Fall, that was one of my favorite shows.
Me too.
Monitor and I think Non were on the bill, and the Fall was like incredible.
Where was that at?
Anti-Club.
Madam Wong's West.
Anti-Club.
Oh, that was Anti-Club. Okay. Oh, sorry.
We all went to see the Fall at Madam Wong's West. They did a show there.
Yeah.
That's what I'm mixing up. Sorry.
Yeah. That was a great show.
There was an Al's Bar show too.
Yes, there was. We played with them a couple of times. Yeah.
So Bar one was, to my memory, the best. It might have been the first time we did Phantoms, and I remember how well that came out, because that was one of the last songs. That was like, you know, in '81, I think.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite songs that we played. That was a great song.
The one that I always wanted, you know, to have not just a rough, but, you know, testament to how good we sounded in rehearsal, but that was just a rough rehearsal cassette.
Yeah.
And that exists. That's it. And
I remember hearing you guys play that live and saying, we got to have that one on the record.
yeah. It's like,
that was a great song.
If I could turn back time, I would.
Yeah.
Another memorable show was probably our biggest one, opening for the B-52s. And we didn't really have a sound check. I mean, our sound man was mixing our sound through the first 3 songs. And it was the first time in a large space with a high stage, and all these kids were smashed against the stage. And they're basically waiting for the headliners. And in the middle of one of our songs, I look up just in time to see a projectile heading for my face. And but before it hits me, it drops, hits my bass over the pickups, right on the string, goes boing and shoots off. And also, I mean, I had a bad bass amp, and you know, I really regret that I didn't have a better equipment. But there, I just remember picking up the bass, and you know, basically it was like snare, kick, guitar, and as soon as we made a sound, they'd move to the next instrument. And I hit my bass and the stage shook. And so that was really memorable for me to like, boom, okay.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
power, the low end.
That's the stone.
But that was a crazy show. I mean, weird shit happened to me
But
that
I
night.
was looking
But
at the audience, and they were like that was one of the times where I was really shocked at how they seemed to know some of our material. So
Yeah.
yeah,
we weren't really paying attention to what was being played or not, but they were playing Trains and a couple of other things on, especially K-Rock. And that was kind of gratifying to see, because I was just scared to death, really. Like, who are these people? Why would, but they liked us, They closed the curtain, but everyone was like wanting an encore. Remember? They just
Yeah.
closed.
Yeah.
it felt like we won them over by the end.
Yeah.
The weird that kind of stuff of being surprised that people knew your material is really interesting. And that when the years later, when the band broke up, I was done with Wall of Voodoo. Mary and I moved up to Seattle. We had kids, and Jack, our oldest boy, was at elementary school, and he came home and he said he had a new friend, and this friend knew who Human Hands was, this little kid. All these years later, I mean, I was kind of half used to somebody, oh yeah, Wall of Voodoo, I've heard of that. Never have I with Human Hands, and I was stunned and mighty happy.
Yeah, that's always nice.
Yeah, it's a cool little thing.
The Huntington publications, at the Huntington, came up to me. I've been there like 18 years, and a few years ago when he started, like 6 years ago, he came up to me and he goes, "Are you Juan Gomez from Human Hands?"
Yeah.
he was from Boston, but he said when he was in college, all his 5 closest friends and he were the biggest Human Hands fans. And I thought, really, how did we never get to play outside of the West Coast? It's like just one of the. It's just until much later, of course, the Reformed. We did a few shows out of town, and people did know us. I mean, part of it is because of Dream Syndicate, but not then. So it was kind of interesting that we managed to get to a few people. That's gratifying. So
that's nice feeling when that happens.
Yeah, it is.
I did want to mention before we let you go that some of the songs on here, versions of some of these songs, end up on the CD Bouncing to Disc that the band released.
Yes.
So there are CD versions of some of these.
Yeah, Dennis, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't we try to put different versions on Bouncing the Disc whenever we could?
Yeah, whenever we could. If we had another version, we'd try to do that.
Yeah, we went back into our tape library and tried to see if we can find alternate versions of some of it, not all of it, but yeah, we found a few different versions.
And then also, last but not, I don't know if you guys need to quit, but last but not least was what came out a couple of years later. I remember I was living in the Valley, Bruce, when we put this together, the whatchamacallit album, Hereafter.
Oh, the Hereafter.
Yeah, which is, do you guys know about that one? I'm trying to find my copy. Okay,
Yeah, so Nate Starkman and Son release.
Yeah, that was a cool record.
That's a collection. So the idea for that I remember proposing to you was our studio recordings as they were. More, everything we actually did in a studio, because most of the most of the double album is
Rehearsed live stuff.
Old Waldorf live recording.
Yeah.
Not all of it, but a lot of it. And this was sort of the collection of maybe what could have been our first album, had we.
It's a good one.
It is a good one.
I love it.
Yeah, thanks again for that.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah, that one. Oh, so you do have it. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so for me, I remember at some point, it was after Jubilee had come out, going on a backpacking trip with my brother and some friends, my older brother, down in Mexico. And we had this long, through the Mexican desert, this long hike into this canyon. And I had two songs that kept me going on this hike where I was like exhausted. And one was Jubilee and the other one was Savage Republic's Exodus. So I just, in my mind, it was just Jubilee, just keep walking.
That's great.
So
A March hiking tunes.
That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, that was 1988, I think, the Hereafter.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's a YouTube video that somebody put up that has Jubilee, and it has some early footage, the Malays, the French guy, and there's demons dancing to it. And
Yeah.
then the lyrics, all of a sudden the lyrics made a lot more sense to me.
I thought Dennis was always really good about having this happy song about melancholy, or
Yeah.
I'm in love with everybody but you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I could imagine Satan singing it. So
I hadn't thought of that angle.
That was put together by that kid's pretty young that was doing that. He did another one too. Somebody knows who he is.
They made that video.
Yeah.
YouTube thing. Yeah. That was very cool.
He's
Ian
in-
Rosen or something.
Huh?
Ian Rosen, is that his name?
Oh, is he the one that was doing those?
I
Was
don't
he-
know.
Oh,
It just popped in my head. I could be way off base. Anyway, that was a sidetrack, but it's pretty
Might
fun
be.
video.
it's pretty. Yeah, I love it. Oh, look, here's the other releases on the archive of Nate Startman. The Dentists, For Against, Abecedarians. Is there any of that in print?
So there a few of those have been reissued. For Against albums have been reissued on other labels, and then Abecedarians got reissued about 10 years ago.
Oh, okay, cool.
So
I got to say that the level, the quality of stuff that came out, the Savage Republic ones that got and also the Red Temple Spirits, those are incredible that you just really reissued the packaging.
yeah, thanks.
I don't know if we're ready to talk about anything like that, but I'm not really sure what I don't really know what you're proposing, actually, come to think of it. Are we?
Well, we'll say this now that we, Dennis and Juan and I have had a couple of conversations about kind of putting together another Human Hands retrospective. And as to what shape that will take, we don't know at this point.
Okay.
The conversation has begun, and we'll see where it goes.
Okay.
That makes me very excited. So we didn't want to take too much of your time, and we really thank you guys for coming in and all joining and talking about this fantastic record. I love the band. This record means a lot to me personally, as well as your other records. So thank you guys so much for joining us and telling us a little bit about what went into it. And Bruce, thanks again, because
My pleasure.
this is definitely one of my favorite records that I own in this collection back here. So
Aw, Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you,
That-
Jeffrey.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's something.
Yeah,
So,
That means a lot.
yeah.
does
let's
mean a
hope-
lot.
let's hope that there is more to come, Bruce. We'll see.
All right.
All right.
All right.
Thank you guys so much for taking the
Thank
time.
you.
Again. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us
Of
very
course.
much. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
All right.
Great to see you all.
Bye, Bruce. Bye, Greg. Bye.